Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. I just finished watching Naked and Afraid Last One Standing Season 3 Episode 4. And if I had to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 4. I know that I said that last week's episode was my least favorite for the season, but this week's episode was my least favorite for the season for two reasons. First, it felt like the majority of this episode really dragged out over the 2-hour runtime. And this was because a lot of the time was spent showing the episode's challenge, as well as the aftermath of the challenge. So unfortunately, while there were no Bigfoot man-ape spottings for the episode, the story for the episode really could have been told over the course of an hour with no problems. But over the course of 2 hours, it was overkill. And secondly, I felt like an episode like this was a slap in the face to fans of Naked and Afraid Last One Standing, due to how many survivalists were negatively impacted by the challenge in the episode. I'll get more into that in a little bit, but whatever the show was paying these survivalists to put their bodies on the line for our entertainment and for a chance to win a 6-figure prize, in my opinion, these survivalists need at least double what they're making, because anything less should be an insult to anybody who agrees to do this show. I also wasn't surprised that another one of my predictions came true. But over the remainder of this video, I will share my thoughts on the important highlights for the episode, and I will share my thoughts on the newly formed teams. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. The first highlight that I want to discuss will be the team Switchups. Very early on in the episode, all the current teams receive scrolls, and they're informed that they will be migrating very soon. But prior to migrating, everyone has to surrender their survival items. The survivalists then learn who their new partners will be, and they also learn about the next challenge. The new teams are Max and Kayla, Darren and Matt, Jamie and Trish, Patrick and Chini, and Laura and Germaine. And for the new challenge, the new teams must gather the necessary materials to construct a dome shelter. The shelter construction has to take place in different stages, but the first team to properly finish their construction and deconstruct the shelter and carry it across the finish line will get their choice of 3 survival items. The second team to finish gets 2 survival items, and the third team to finish gets the last 2 remaining survival items. The bottom 2 teams then have to face off in an elimination challenge. So going into this challenge, I didn't have any concerns for Max and Kayla, as well as Darren and Matt. Max has always been a powerhouse when it comes to building things, and just as I predicted, Max came on to Last One Standing and he hit the ground running. Kayla has always been a very determined competitor, and she's one of the strongest survivalists that I've known on the show. So I had no concerns for their survival skills or ability to work together as a team. Same with Darren and Matt. Darren has been a powerhouse when it comes to his ability to bushcraft and build things. Couple that with Matt's survival skills and determination to win, I see no problems with this team. But then we have the 3 other teams. Patrick and Chini are an effective team, but I don't think that they're as strong as the 2 teams that I mentioned before them. Laura and Germaine are amazing within their own right, but they've never worked together before, and sometimes Germaine can be set in his ways when it comes to completing a task in this format. And with Jamie and Trish, just like Laura and Germaine, I think that Jamie and Trish are great survivalists, but as a team, I'm not sure if they're strong enough to compete against the other teams. But after watching how the challenge unfolded, I wasn't very surprised with how the teams placed in the challenge. Max and Kayla were neck and neck with Darren and Matt, but Max's team squeaked by with the first place win, and the 3 assets that they secured were the bow, fishing hooks, and the hide. With Matt and Darren finishing in a close second, they picked the bow and the fishing hooks. And with Patrick and Chini finishing third, they secured the cord and another bow. Which leads me to my next highlight, which would be the issue with this particular challenge. In my opinion, this dome challenge was one of the most difficult challenges in the history of Last One Standing. You have a very physically demanding challenge that takes place in a very hot environment, and the risk for injury is very high. In my opinion, whoever was in charge of implementing this challenge needed to pivot to a more safer challenge for everyone involved. I say this because Laura was nearly med-tapped due to suffering whiplash from a vine that hit her in the head, from what appeared to be a freak accident. Trish accidentally got some tree sap in her eye, and that particular sap could cause permanent damage to the eye. Then Jamie had a heat stroke and had to be carried off by several people, and this was the prediction that I made very early on in the season. Thanks to the previews that were shown, it was clear that somebody of a considerable size was being carried off the show, and I was leaning towards Jamie, but I also predicted that it could be Matt or Trent, if they had made it that far. I'm glad that Jamie was evacuated and that he got the medical treatment that he needed in a timely manner. But earlier in this review, I mentioned my disappointment with how the show allowed this type of challenge to take place when considering how hot it was going to be for the day, because the heat made all the difference in the world. Furthermore, the medic recommended that Trish be taken to the hospital for an evaluation, and Trish refused. I also suspect that Laura wasn't 100% honest with the medic regarding if she were truly able to continue on with the show. Let me say that $100,000 is a lot of money, but this show merely offers folks the opportunity to make that money. A person's life and well-being should be well worth more than $100,000, which is why I feel that the cast members should be paid a lot more than what they're making. Because in my opinion, more money might convince some of these survivalists to put their own well-being above what they could possibly get if they make it to the end of the challenge. But my respect goes out to Germaine, who had the sense to call the medic for Laura and get her checked out. I can tell that Germaine likes being part of the show, but he won't sacrifice his health and life for it. But because Jamie was med-tapped, that means there is no elimination for this episode. The last highlight that I want to discuss will be the wrinkle that the showrunners threw into the team selection process. The day after the Dome Shelter Challenge, Germaine, Laura, and Trish migrate to Zone 2. But instead of these three survivalists being pre-selected or randomly choosing which of the three teams they want to join, they have to walk to each team to see which team wants to pick them. And this is done in the order of how the teams finished in their Dome Shelter Challenge, which means that Max and Kayla got the first pick, Darren and Matt got the second pick, Patrick and Cheney got whoever was left over. In my opinion, this new change kind of gives some of the teams more of a competitive advantage over the others, instead of evening the playing field. In my opinion, because Patrick and Cheney came in third place with the Dome Shelter Challenge, they should have gotten the first pick, because let's face it, unless Max and Kayla suffer some sort of medical emergency, there's no way they're going to get eliminated before the halfway point of the season. But I thought it was interesting how Max and Kayla's strategy when deciding who to choose for the team was very different from Darren and Matt's strategy. In my opinion, Max and Kayla picked Laura after knowing that she's dealing with an injury strictly based on feelings and not facts. This is because of the history that Max and Laura have together, which is an amazing history, no doubt about it. But this is last one standing, and at some point, there can only be one winner. Furthermore, I'll be willing to bet that the new teams will have to compete some kind of challenge that requires the help from everybody on the team to finish first. So I wouldn't consider this pick by Max and Kayla to be a very smart pick. However, when it comes to Matt and Darren, I believe that in their hearts, they wanted to pick Germaine. But Matt is somebody who knows how to play the game, and Patrick made the mistake by coming over to Matt's team earlier in the episode and vented to them about how much he dislikes Germaine. Matt, being the king of petty, picked Trish to be on his team because he felt that Germaine going back to Patrick's team would cause more turmoil within a pretty solid unit. So the episode ends with the new teams being formed, but I'll share my thoughts on these three new teams starting from the strongest to the weakest. In my opinion, the strongest team is going to be Darren, Matt, and Trish. Trish may only have one fully working eye, but she still has a sharp mind for the game and she knows how to play it. I think that Darren and Matt are pretty dangerous when working together, but I still believe that Trish could be a huge asset to the team. And if Trish makes a full recovery from the incident with her eye, I don't see this team losing any challenges going into Phase 3. The second team is Max, Laura, and Kayla. I think that this team probably has the best camaraderie amongst the three teams, but camaraderie will only get you but so far. Laura still has a pretty serious injury. Not serious enough to get her removed from the competition, but if the team needs Laura to be at 100% in order to win a challenge, then they might be disappointed in the results. I have a feeling that heading into Phase 3, Max and Kayla will try to get Laura to take things easy and rest a little. This might cause Max and Kayla to experience some sort of burnout from having to carry the extra load. And with Max saying that he has concerns for Kayla's ability to make it to the end due to her frail body frame, I have a feeling that Kayla might come up short in an elimination challenge due to the lack of food and nutrients. I also feel that with Laura's injury, the group is at risk of heading into the elimination, but we shall see. And lastly, there's Patrick, Cheney, and Germaine. I thought that Hallgate was a thing of the past in last week's episode, but I was wrong. Patrick seemed to have beef with Germaine, and it seems like Germaine might not like Patrick that much either. In the middle of all this is Cheney, who is seemingly going along just to get along at this point. I think that the issues between Patrick and Germaine will eventually hit a boiling point, and this will cause the team to lose a challenge and be up for elimination. If this is the case, then I think things will become very interesting. When I initially saw the previews for the season, there was a scene with Germaine being very emotional and saying, quote, "Because in your darkest days, you don't quit," which leads me to believe that he had just survived an elimination challenge, which means that Chini would likely be the one that's getting eliminated. But then I spotted another scene with Chini declaring herself to be the queen of the jungle, and another scene of her saying, quote, "Who says girls can't rule?" And there's no Germaine in sight, and these scenes haven't been aired yet. Then there's the preview for next week's episode, which has this crazy showdown between Germaine and Patrick. Then you also have mass prediction that either Patrick or Germaine will be quitting very soon. So I think that Germaine's time on the chopping block will be coming up very soon, if not next week. I also believe that the scene with Germaine being very emotional may be of him losing an elimination challenge, but being proud that he didn't quit on himself. And I do believe that Chini and Patrick will earn some success as a... But for me, the sad part about all this is that this team is actually one of the strongest teams left, if they could come together and put aside their petty grievance. But not everybody was made to get along with one another. So here we are. But this marks the end of the review. If you have any questions or comments related to the episode or the review, feel free to leave them below in the comments section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.